What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In this one, I'm going to walk you through how to trade your Pokemon between the Generation 1 and Generation 2 Virtual Console titles, but because of the eShop closing down, you may not have a second system with the games installed and you can't download them anymore. So I'll be going over two separate methods. The first one works if you only have a single 3DS or 2DS and you don't want to buy a second one, or you don't have a second one. And we'll be able to take the save files from the 3DS onto your computer and load them both up in an emulator, and then we should be able to trade between both of them just like normal. But if you do have a second 3DS, I'll go over how to take the ROMs from your physical cartridges and inject them into a second 3DS or 2DS and then play the games on that system, and then you can use the Wi-Fi connection of both of the 3DSs to just trade like you normally would. The primary thing you'll need for both of these methods is a 3DS or a 2DS with custom firmware installed, and how to do that is beyond the scope of this video, and I don't want to get in trouble with the Nintendo ninjas for, going into too much detail with that, but I will point you towards this site, 3DS Hacks Guide. The URL is actually 3ds.hacks.guide, but if you go through the tutorial there, it walks you through everything you should need to know to install the custom firmware, and it's a pretty simple process, a little bit involved, but I used this tutorial when I did it on mine, and it wasn't too bad. But as we see here, I have my 2DS, in this case, hooked up to my computer so I can show you what I'm doing. And this is one that has been modded with custom firmware. So you got the homebrew launcher, which is a telltale sign. But primarily, for this entire thing to work, one piece of software you'll need to install is Checkpoint, which I actually made a video a while back going over how to back up and restore save files using custom firmware and using Checkpoint, and how to install that onto your 3DS or 2DS. So I encourage you to go check out that video for a little bit more detail on this whole process. But what I'm going to do here is basically what I did in that video, except in that one I was working with Pokemon Platinum, but it's all pretty much the same, the way you back up the saves. But once you have all of that set up and Checkpoint is installed, the icon should be the one you see right here, this little flag. You should be able to launch that software, and we should be able to scroll to our Virtual Console titles once they load. And you see I have 3 of them listed here, and for this tutorial we're just going to deal with Pokemon Yellow and Pokemon Crystal. But the first thing we're going to want to do is back up those save files. So you want to click the new option down there and then hit the L button, and then say yes to backup, and hit OK for the file name. The default there is fine, and then boom, and you should see a bunch of numbers, which is typically the date and some other stuff. So that one is backed up to the SD card, which is perfect. Then you can hit the B button to get back up to your game selection. Go over to Crystal, since that's the other game we're doing. And these games may vary for you. I'm not sure what games you may want to back up. You can do this with Red, Blue, Crystal, Gold, Silver, and Yellow, which I believe are all of the titles that were released for the 3DS. And if you have cartridge-based games like Platinum, you can also kind of mess with those save files, which you can see in that other video I mentioned. But you just want to do the same thing here. Hit new, hit backup, hit yes, say OK, and done. So both of those should have the save files backed up, as you can see. We'll power that down, and then you're going to want to take your SD card from the system and stick it into your computer, so we can pull those save files off of the SD card into the computer and then load them up in an emulator. And after that, well, you also need to get the ROMs for the games, which we'll go through that. And now on your computer, after you insert your SD card, which you'll also need an SD card reader for your computer, and hopefully you'll have one of those. But for this, we're going to want to open up, I believe, the 3DS folder, and then go to Checkpoint, and then Saves, and you should see folders for all the games that you have on there, that you've messed with Checkpoint, maybe at one time or another. And here we got Pokemon Yellow, and then you'll go into the folder that has the numbers like we saw on the 3DS. And now the file you're going to want to grab from this is the save.dat. So we're going to copy that, and we're going to go over to here. I already have some folders I created to do all this. We got this Pokemon Yellow folder. I'm just going to stick it in there, which is a folder on my computer. Now, back on the SD card, go back to saves, go to Crystal this time, into this folder, and also grab the save.dat file. And then we can go over to the little Pokemon Crystal folder I created, which I already have the ROM for that one in there, and stick that save file there. So we're most of the way there already. So we should be good with the SD card for now. So, but also you're going to need the ROMs for your games. And there are many ways online to get these ROMs. So I will not suggest any nefarious methods. But, you know, to each their own. You do you. But for this, I'm actually going to use the GB operator. It's a really awesome device I love. That lets you connect up your games and send your save files and ROMs back and forth from the physical cartridge. I'm going to get my GB operator hooked up and we will take that ROM from one of these games. I already got the crystal one. So we're going to grab the yellow ROM. So we'll be able to load that game up. So hold on 1 second. And here I got the Epilogue software you download to interface with your GB operator. And I'm going to take my Pokemon Yellow physical cartridge and insert it. Cartridge showing up here with all the information for the game that was uploaded. It's kind of cool how you can see all this data. Got a nice description. It also checks if it's an official cartridge or not. So if you have a bootleg one, it would tell you here. But one of the cool things we can do, you can kind of open up and play a game right here. But you can also go to data, and now you can back up your game or back up your save or upload your save. So if you have your save file, you can kind of send it to and from your physical cartridge if you want to, do that. But for this tutorial, we're going to back up the actual ROM of the game here. So I stuck it all in these folders. This is going to be the Pokemon Yellow. So let's just leave that file name the way it is. That should be fine. And we're going to back it up. And you should see a bunch of fun numbers flying past and it turn all green. Very satisfying. But once that's done, we should be good there. And now you see the ROM file actually loaded up right here into the folder where we saved it. Now for these next steps, you're going to need an emulator. My emulator of choice is MGBA. You can search online and go find and download that pretty easily. And we're going to want to load up this ROM just to verify what the save file name should look like. So Pokemon Yellow, just the one we just downloaded. There you go. Boom. And you can see the file of what the save is going to look like. It's basically the same name as the ROM, except with .save at the end of it. And you see I have new game as the option because I haven't actually started a game now. This is all fresh. But the save file we just copied over, we can load up here. That's pretty simple to do it. Let's see. I'm just going to take this long file name, including the .save. Just copy it. Makes it easier. And I'm just going to delete that file that was just created because we don't need that. But now the save.dat that we copied from our 3DS, we just changed the file name to match that there with the .save extension, and boom. And now we should be good to load it up and get into the actual game that I just backed up. So if we fire back up MGBA, go to recent ROMs, the one I just opened. Now I can activate speed up to really get through this. Boom, now we have the option to continue, because now this is actually the save file I just pulled off of my 2DS. And the player name is what? I think this could be the file I used for a playthrough back on my channel. Naming it a silly name. But yeah, we got some, it looks like it was a complete playthrough. All these decently powerful Pokemon. And we're going to want to do a similar thing to Pokemon Crystal. I already got that ROM, but you can back up the ROM using the GB operator just like I did the yellow version. And save it in an appropriate folder. And here we just want to take our crystal save we backed up, overwrite the file name save.dat with the p_crystal.save, or whatever your ROM may be named, but now except with the .save extension. And as long as it looks like that, we should be good to take our ROM, load it up, and there we go. Continue is now an option. And this is the save file that was on my 2DS. Now that all that's taken care of, we should be able to trade between these two. Now that we have them on our computer, you're going to want to go to File and New Multiplayer window. Now we got a second window here, but in this window we can actually load up our Pokemon Yellow ROM. Okay, one issue I found here that I came across is that now after you load up the game, your save file no longer is recognized when you open it up in a multiplayer window. So if we look back at our folder, see it created a new file that's SA2. So we have to change our original file. Yeah, let's see. If I close this window, let's get rid of this SA2 that got created when I tried to load it up. And let's change our original save file to SA2. So basically, whichever game you want to have be player 2, you have to name it .sa2 instead of SAV. So now if I go to our new multiplayer window, load the yellow version ROM, now we got the option to continue. We have Pokemon Yellow version and Pokemon Crystal side by side in an emulator, and up at the top you can see player 1 of 2 and player 2 of 2. Let's just order them properly so it makes sense. So, and of course you also need to have progressed far enough into these games to have trade unlocked, and in the case of Crystal you need to have the time capsule available to you. I think by the time you get the Goldenrod and you go into that Pokemon Center, I think that's when it triggers that, possibly. It's been a while since I played the first part of the game. Oh, Togepi can't be taken. Alright. See, that's the one thing. You have to make sure you have a Pokemon in your party that's actually Gen 1 compatible. So, hold on a second while I go make that happen. Alright, I found a wild Pidgey. We're just going to catch that for this tutorial. Let's go. Balls. Pokeball should be good. No, maybe not. Come on. Catch it. Catch it. Yes, gotcha. Pidgey was caught. Okay, so, and hopefully it doesn't know any illegal moves for Gen 1. So it has Tackle. Perfect. That is a Gen 1 move that was in that game, so no need to worry about that. And just go to your PC, deposit the Pokemon that is a Gen 2 Pokemon that wouldn't be able to go backwards in time because Togepi didn't exist in Pokemon Yellow version. Now all we have is a Pidgey in our party, so that should be fine. Alright, I tried to reload both of these because it didn't seem to want to work. I also tried to switch it to make Pokemon Yellow version player 1 and Crystal as player 2. Maybe it cared about that for some reason. Okay, so let's head down and save. Have this one save. Yeah. Okay. Ah, look at perfect. There we go. It worked. All right. Look at that. We're trading. So it let me walk into the trade thing here. It detected. All right. So maybe Pokemon Yellow version has to be player 1, and then Crystal should be player 2. I guess that kind of makes sense. You know, the game that came first be player 1, but either it just wasn't quite clicking at first, and now it's starting to work. So I guess if you have troubles, you know, make sure. I guess just try to make sure player 1 is Yellow version, or whatever version is the older version. Like, I guess make Generation 1 player 1, Generation 2 player 2. I guess that's the good way to go about it. Alright, so now we're gonna click A on the little trade console to hop into our trade screen. And we should be able to do it now. Look at that. We see the Pidgey I just caught. And then we have my team in the other game there. So, let's see. What should I trade just for, you know, fun? Let's just take this Eevee. Okay, and I'm gonna trade that Pidgey. There you go. Trade. Waiting. Eevee and Pidgey will be traded. Trade. And here we go. This is so cool. Awesome that this works like this. Alright. Yeah. Goodbye, Eevee. And goodbye, Pidgey. There they go. Nice. And spits it out, blop. So, Eevee is over here now, and Pidgey went that way. Pidgey. Oh, yeah, we gotta see the other direction now. And now Pidgey's coming back the other way. That's awesome. Okay. Trade completed. And there you go. Our trade is done. Just as easy as that. And then we can just cancel and get out of here. Just go end our trade. And I guess in the Crystal version, we have to actually walk out of this little room here. It should then kick us out on the other side. There you go. Yeah, I guess the older game, you might have to just reset. Sometimes it may kick you back out to the Poké Center. Other times you may just have to reset, since I should have saved everything. Doesn't really matter. Now if we look at our party on Pokemon Crystal, what used to be a weak little Pidgey is now a level 41 Eevee. Nice. And let's see, on the yellow version, we should have the Pidgey now. Our powerful Eevee. Swapped out for a weak Route 1 Pidgey. There it is, level 3 Pidgey. They swap places alright. But of course, if you want to trade backwards, you can't send any Pokemon that didn't exist in Gen 1 back into Gen 1, of course. And any non-compatible moves wouldn't be allowed to transfer back. I suppose one thing we learned, just make sure player 1 is the older game. And because maybe that's required, maybe not, but it's the only way I got it to work. So, but okay, now that the trade is complete, the final thing to do would be to send the save files, as they are now, back to our 2DS. Take the save file from our computer. which in this case it would be the .sav file because that was our player 1 in the trade. We got the SAV file. We want to go save.dat. Let's just take that file name, delete the save.dat. That's the older file. And overwrite this file name with that one. Alright, everybody. One final step here I discovered. I think gold, silver, and crystal. This is how you'll have to do it. But yeah, when I try to load up Pokemon Yellow version with the re-imported save file, it works just fine. And we can test it out here really quickly. It appears Gen 2 is more finicky. But let's see if we look at the see, I get the continue option, and then it's exactly what I would expect to see. You go in your Pokemon, there's the level 3 Pidgey I trade over, so yeah, that all works great. But when I try to load Pokemon Crystal, I get an error saying the file's corrupted. So what I've discovered you possibly have to do here, hopefully this works, is we're going to have to go to this site, the 3DS VC save file converter, which will convert your gold, silver, crystal file to a 3DS virtual console save file. And that URL is up here. If you probably just search Google for it, you can find it. Yeah, I tried to do several things before getting to this point. So I grabbed a fresh ROM from my actual physical crystal, thinking maybe the ROM I had was weird. That's why now it has this proper name here. Well, let's see if we take that and convert. Okay, oh, there we go. And now it downloaded as a save.dat file. Okay. So I'm going to take that save.dat and stick it onto the SD card and try to see if we can re-import that. Alright, so this is one step that I was unaware of that now we have figured out. We've learned. Now we're going to want to take that file, run into our 3DS, checkpoint, saves, crystal, into that folder there, that save.dat. I'm going to now paste and overwrite the save.dat I tried to use with the proper one that was just converted. Now, let's see if we can load it up, or restore it into 3DS and load it up. Now, once it loads up here, we're going to want to go back over to checkpoint, see if we can restore that file this time, and if it actually successfully restores. Okay. Crystal, go down to our file, hit right trigger, restore. Okay. Now let's see if it loads. Fingers crossed. Okay, no error so far, so that's a good sign. And Pokemon Crystal version, please continue. Yeah, alright. Continue, and we're in. Right where we left off. And my Pokemon is a single level 41 Eevee, which is what we trade over, so perfect. So it's a little addendum to all this. Before you try to copy the save over, and you can't just rename it to save.dat and overwrite it on the SD card and hope it all works. You have to run it through this converter, which will download it, which will change it into a save.dat and do whatever it has to do. And then you copy that to the SD card, overwrite the file that's there, and you should be able to re-import it through checkpoint and then load it up just fine. That pretty much wraps up the first method for doing all this here. Now the second method is going to be a little bit more involved and going to deal with taking ROMs of our games and injecting them into a 3DS or a 2DS that doesn't have those games already. You know? So for instance, say you have a semi-new or just a 3DS or 2DS you've never downloaded Pokemon games onto, and now the eShop is closed, so there's no way to get them. Well, here's what we do. Let's install some of the other ones that we're missing. Like we don't have blue version or gold or silver on here, so we can mess with some of those. But first we're going to need those ROMs. So once again, we're going to use the GB operator. So first let's get our ROMs. For this example, let's do Pokemon Silver version, since we're missing that one from this 2DS. So we can go to data, and you can back up the ROM. And if you have a save file on your cartridge, you can back that up too. But let's create a new folder to keep things organized. Pokemon Silver. Okay. And save. and it should take a few seconds. Typically these files are pretty small, but now it's backed up. Okay, perfect. Now that we have that ROM, you may be wondering, what do you do with it? You can't just drag and drop it onto the SD card for your 2DS. That won't really work. Instead, you have to create a .cia file, which is like a application installer file that a homebrew recognizes. And we're going to need a special program for that. And this, the new Super Ultimate Injector 3DS is what you're going to want to download. And if you just search for it, new Super Ultimate Injector 3DS download, as your search phrase, it should be the first thing that pops up. And you can just click the download link here. And once that's downloaded, it'll be a zip file, and then you can unzip it, and you should get this. And then you can open up the new Super Ultimate Injector for 3DS.exe file, and then this program should be what you see. And this will allow us to create the proper installer files that we need for our ROM. And if you want to need more information about how to use this program fully, there's also a tutorial link on this page. Kind of walks you through some of the steps of how to use it. But basically, we should be able to go to New, and then select your system. And if you're doing Crystal, you would want to do Game Boy Color, because it's a Game Boy Color game. But for all the other ones, they're all just Game Boy games. So that should do that. Alright. Now you'll see this. And you should be able to, I believe, take your Pokemon Silver ROM file and just drag it right over. And I can't find the chosen ROM in the database, which is unfortunate. Alright, I tried a couple things to see if I could get the data to load from the servers that pull the stuff, but I couldn't figure it out, so we can just do it all manually. I have the names and the publisher and all stuff typed in. For game icon, I just downloaded the Pokemon Silver box art. We can just do that, and boom. Looks pretty decent. And you can kind of get fancy with it a little bit, or if you really want it to look nice and neat, you can kind of tweak it or however much you want here. But that's as good as I think I'm going to get it for now. So this is what's going to look like on your actual system when when it's hovering there, the icon, for you to click on it, or for when you go over it to click on it. And you kind of want to, like the Virtual Console banner, you probably want to make that look nice. Pokemon Silver version. Release date. When was the release date? Good question. Okay, it was in 1999, so we're just going to put 1999. And for Crystal version, you would put 2001. And then the other games, you can look up what dates those would be. And, alright, looks pretty good. This is what it will look like on the system. One more thing I'm going to interject quickly here. Before you export your CIA file, and once it's all set up here, you want to make sure you click the Edit Content options, and you want to switch it from Pixel Perfect to Recommended. If you leave it at Pixel Perfect, it's going to keep it at its native resolution, so it's going to be really small on your screen. But if you flip it to Recommended, it will fill the full top screen of the 3DS or 2DS like it's supposed to, and like it normally does. But if you prefer it to be tiny, and maybe give it a border, I guess, like that, you could have some fun, I suppose. But typically you want to click Recommended just so it fills the full screen and doesn't look all tiny and small. So yeah, I just wanted to interject that really quickly. And another couple things I've realized after the fact that you need to make sure are set properly for this to even have a chance of working is for the injection method, you have to make sure it's set to New GB Virtual Console. I think by default it was set to Old. So with the new version, that makes sure the wireless link connectivity through custom patches is able to actually work like it's supposed to. And speaking of the patch, you actually need to find the Virtual Console patch file for the game you're trying to inject. And as you can see down here, I imported the VC patch file for Silver USA EUR, and that was a little bit of a tricky thing to find. Over here is the zip file I downloaded that had all the different patches for different languages for all the Gen 2 games. And then I applied the English one. And it was on this forum that somebody had this attachment here that I downloaded that had all those patches. And the direct link to that, if you want to try to download it, you type this in, it should download the file. And then you can try to apply the appropriate patch for your language game. But yeah, this whole, injecting the ROM onto a 3DS or 2DS has become way more complicated than I initially thought it would be. And it should technically function and should be able to trade now wirelessly after you get all these pieces in place before you build your CIA file. And then you install it and it should work. Because now with this patch, it should allow the wireless connectivity to be able to trigger when you go to do a trade. But I haven't been able to fully test it. And in theory it should all work. But I recommend to you, instead of doing all this, unless you really want to try to dive in and do it, and if you don't really care as much about the trading part of it, even though it should work, my initial method of just using the emulation and a single 3DS to kind of trade between the two save files you may have, and then re-import them back to the console. That whole process is way simpler than all of this. But this should work if you're able to find the proper patch file for your game. Make sure you have the injection method set properly and all these other things. I make no guarantees if you want to go down this particular path that it will all function properly, but from what I've seen, it should. But I still recommend option 1 from the start of my video if you want to try to shift. All you're trying to do is trade. Well, alright, back to the rest of the video. And now we're going to want to, with a project, we can export CIA. And let's just name it. Doesn't matter really what you call it here. We'll just call it Poca Silver, and then it'll be .cia when it creates it. All right. Now we got your Poca Silver.cia over here in our folder. This is where I stuck it. Now you're going to want to load up your SD card for your system. Okay. Now if you're back on your SD card, there should actually be a folder for CIA files somewhere here. Right here goes CIAS. So for CIAs. And here, we should just be able to take the CIA file we just created and just drop it into that folder. And now, if we put the SD card back into the system and load into our homebrew applications, or into the launcher, it should ask us to install the file. Alright. Now we're back into the system. We should be able to go to... Alright, the homebrew launcher, I believe, is what we want to hop into. Which you should have if you got everything all set up. Let's see. Maybe this isn't the right application. Oh, here it is. That's it. So you should want to go down to FBI, which is a separate application that it can load into. Alright, now we're here. Okay, so let's see. We should be able to go to the SD card, which is the first option. Down to the CIAS directory, and we should be able to click on pokesilver.cia to be created. You can see up there it has our icon and everything. Looks nice. And then we should be able to just click install CIA. And I typically like to say install and delete CIA, so it will install the application, then remove that file from the CIA folder since it's not needed anymore. And say A for yes, and it should do it once the progress bar finishes. And then hit OK. And you can see the file's gone from the directory. And now if we back out, back to our home menu, we should see it show up. There we go, new software has been added. Pokemon Silver version. And let's unwrap our gift. There it is. Yeah, you can work a little bit harder if you want to make the icon look prettier. But there it is. And we can click it, close the other software. And then we should be able to load up the game and play it perfectly right here on the system. And there we go. Looks just like the regular version if you would have purchased and downloaded from the eShop back in the day, but we got the ROM on here ourselves and it functions beautifully. And now that you have the game on your second 3DS or 2DS, you should be able to go through the regular process of trading across games like you would normally. I'm not going to go through the whole process of actually trading, across two 3DSs, since it's pretty self-explanatory. Basically, you just go to the same person you went to earlier when we were trading across the emulator versions. And except then it should ask you to activate Wi-Fi and you should be able to connect the systems up, and be able to trade. Just like back in the day if you were hooked up with a link cable. And I tested that earlier and that all works fine. But that pretty much covers the basics. You should be able to take any ROM you might want to stick onto another 2DS or 3DS and be able to follow these steps to get it to work. And you can use some of the steps from earlier in the tutorial to get your save files exported and imported onto the system if you have like a For example, in this case, if you would already have a Pokemon Silver save file. So you would want to export your save file, as shown earlier, from your original 3DS, and then import it into the second 3DS here, so then you can have this save file fired up, and then whatever other game you want to trade to or from on the first 3DS fired up, and then be able to initiate that trade, and then just trade just like you would expect. And it all should work. But if you only have a single 3DS and or 2DS, I think my initial suggestion of just going the emulator route, loading up both save files after you back them up in an emulator and trading that way, and then re-importing your save files back to your 3DS, that may be the simpler option if you don't want to have to get extra hardware. Because then you have to have two 3DSs with Homebrew installed versus just having one originally. But remember, if you're messing with the save files for Gold, Silver, or Crystal, trying to get them to load up into your Virtual Console version, you'll need to convert the save file using this website here before you're able to use Checkpoint to import it into the Virtual Console version. Otherwise, it'll appear corrupted and won't work. And then the Gen 1 games seem to work just fine, just copying the files back and forth with no extra messaging required. I'm probably not going to put any of the links to some of these websites in my video description, since I got burned once before doing that. But one time I had a tutorial that I linked people to a certain site to download whatever the program was, and then that site got taken over and corrupted or whatever, and then YouTube flagged it as fraudulent or bad and got my channel like almost struck from having a bad link in the description. So I think I'm just going to avoid that possibility and not have any of those links down there. But you can very easily Google some of this software, or just look for when I had it here in my tutorial to be able to type it in manually, like the URL up here. But if you just Google some of these programs, you should be able to find it pretty quickly. But I hope this was helpful, and hopefully you found it useful, and I didn't come off too rambly. A few little wrenches were thrown into the machine there throughout the course of trying to explain things, and so I had to pivot, and hopefully in the editing I can make it coherent and it all comes together nicely. But everybody, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you found this helpful. And if you want a little bit extra detail about the whole save file import and export kind of thing using Checkpoint and Homebrew, you can watch the other video I did a while back that I mentioned earlier. And I kind of covered a little bit more detail in there, possibly. But I think I got the gist of it in this video, so you should be fine. One more thing before you go. If you enjoy the content that I make, you might also consider joining my Patreon. I don't mention it too often, but not only would this help support the channel, but you also gain access to some exclusive content. Or if you prefer, you can become a channel member right here on YouTube. Channel members enjoy the same benefits as Patreon, but also get access to some YouTube-specific perks, such as loyalty badges and special emojis. But remember, there's no pressure at all. Simply watching, liking, and sharing my videos is a huge support in itself. If you haven't yet, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe so you never miss anything. Thank you once again for watching. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.